On a beautiful and crisp spring morning, we're going to be following up and seeing if we can't find where this young male leopard has gone. I'm relatively certain, for those of you who are familiar viewers, that these are the tracks of Sindile. Now, luckily for me, I'm not all on my own this morning, and Herbert has just arrived to help me track this leopard down. So without further ado, let us go and see what we can find. I'm going to loop around. I'm going to leave Herbert to follow directly on the tracks. Let's see what we can see. Herbert, of course, is our expert tracker and the man with the best smile on the Safari Live team. That's not up for debate. That is absolutely true. That is 100% the case. For new viewers, this is a live and interactive safari coming to you from the middle of the African bush, here in a place called Djuma, Arathusa and Cheetah Plains Game Reserves, in the Sabi Sand in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa, which is of course a place that is world famous for some of the most extraordinary wildlife spectacles on the planet. And not only are we live, but we're also interactive, which means that you can send through your questions on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or please do email through to questions@wildearth.tv and let us see what we can find. It's not just us on the vehicle, there's also Stef out with Gendre. This is of course the first time I have, since I got back to work, that I've been working with a dazzling Dave. We'll all give him a warm welcome as well. And we're going to go and search and see if we can find this leopard. And then of course there's also the exciting prospect for those of you who missed the sunset drive yesterday afternoon. It was my first drive back at work after a 2-week vacation. And I had a lovely welcome back. We had Sindile, the beautiful Sindile, always lovely to see and catch up and see how he's doing. And he's looking so incredibly healthy and good. And then, wonderful Herbert managed to track down the Nkuhumas on a fresh buffalo kill, with the cubs demonstrating that even at a couple of months old, our little lions are fierce predators, growling at mom to try and get access to the buffalo that they were feeding on, buffalo breakfast. Having a look here. I think young Sindile might have encountered the odd lion last night as well. Not necessarily, it's just tracks in the sand in the same places where he's walked. Just want to check something here. He might have decided that perhaps not worth his while sticking about. What happened here? Mystery tracks in the sand. Hold on a second. See if we can figure this out. We started off our morning, speaking of tracking, we started off our morning looking at civet tracks on the breakfast table. Life out here is truly marvelous and a constant interaction with the different wildlife. I've just stopped for a moment to have a look at the scuffles in the ground. It's hyena, nothing else. I want to see what this particular hyena was up to. Except I'm so caught up in cables, I can't. Hold on one moment. And I'm stuck. Wendy, let me out. Thank you. Right, we'll unwrap myself here. My microphone's trying to take a walk. It's decided it doesn't want to be attached to me today, which is fair enough. So there's just something that was happening here. Little scuff marks, and I think what happened here is that a hyena came and picked up some predator's scat. My guess would be either leopard or lion. This hyena winded up and was kind of having a sniff, pushing the scat around, maybe even nibbling on it a bit. You can see where the scuff marks are from the tracks. The actual footprints are here. This is the hyena track. Now, hyenas are curious things by nature. And it seems as though this particular one just went to investigate. Oh no. I'm coming now. I just want to check something quickly. That's most unfortunate. Well, it was safe to say that it was lion scat, because the rest of it is here, safely squashed underneath one of my front tires, which, as you know, is never an ideal thing, because the scent of lion scat will stay with one for many, many days and hours to come. Dear, how terribly unfortunate. So myself and one lonesome hyena somewhere around this reserve now have come away smelling a little bit like lion scat. Oh well. So what we're doing now, having just solved the mystery of the sniffing hyena, is to just try and help Herbert make sure that Sindile didn't cross north into Buffelshoek. We're driving along the northern boundary of Djuma, and as we know, Sindile has not recently been prone to sitting still, which is perfectly normal for a young male leopard that is dispersing. He's trying to find himself a nice safe spot where he can move around and see whether or not he can find a place without another big male leopard to bully him. Now while we continue on the search, I believe that Stef is back up and running. Let's go and find out how his morning's going.
Good morning, good morning. It is actually going alright, and I just want to wish you hello, basically. And for myself and Jandre at least, we are standing here waiting for the sun to rise, and that's exactly what we want to do at the moment, is watch this beautiful sunrise. So Jandre is back from leave, and for the first time back on the camera, so excuse any shakes, sudden movements, blurry vision. Excuse me fiddling over here, I got to get these voices out of my head. There we go. Let's have a look at the sunrise. It's one of those things that's been so special over the last couple of days, is watching the sunrise through the bush. And with the mist yesterday, it's taken most of the dust out of the atmosphere, and that leads me to think that today is going to be one of those ultra bright sunrises. Quite difficult to say for now. We've just got this yellow halo arriving there, you can see it over the bush. And of course that gives us the opportunity to listen to the bush around us while we're waiting for the sun to rise. I don't think it's too far now. It's going from that sort of peachy yellow color to what you're seeing there now. Bushes chorusing around us. We've got a couple of birds this morning. We heard some lions roaring from camp, but very far away, and there was a bushbuck calling at Gallagher Pan just before we set out this morning. But no luck there. I don't quite know what it was barking at. It just seemed to give two barks, this little bushbuck, and then it moved on. So Chris Rogue, you've just sent through an update to say that one of the Birminghams was at the pan a little bit earlier and roared. That's surprising, because either I was fast asleep for that, or my pillow was stuffed too tight around my head, because I didn't hear that at all. But thank you very much for that update. We're actually sitting on the road where his tracks come towards. We're on Twin Dams Road, and his tracks come all the way from the pan down Twin Dams Road, but looks like they turn off somewhere close to where we are now, heading off towards that hyena kill, or that buffalo kill that the Nkuhumas are on at the moment. So we're going to pickle our way through the bush in that direction as soon as we've seen the sun come up and crest through the trees, and hopefully we'll see a Birmingham in attendance on that buffalo. It seems like that's the direction he's been heading in. I'm sure he won't pass up the opportunity for a fresh meal. And all those ladies' hard work yesterday afternoon to take down that buffalo without the male, he now comes in and has his fill. Doesn't seem fair, hey? Except when you look in the greater concept of things, and that male keeps other male lion away. He keeps them at bay, him and his three brothers. And that in turn adds a security, a type of security to the lion pride here, to the Nkuhumas. They get to be the moms that they need to be, hunt the way they need to hunt. And I mean, all those hungry mouths to feed, it's inexpensive from a metabolism point of view, it's expensive to produce milk. And so they really need to hunt for the big things, do what they did yesterday, kill that buffalo, get these big tummies, get the milk flowing, get these cubs as strong as they can, without the stress of also having to patrol around the territory and fight off rival prides and fight off rival males. That's a difficult thing for a lioness to do. And so the male adds a sense of stability and a sense of security that they otherwise wouldn't have, and that would be quite difficult for them to do as well, I think would be my point. Is the sun coming up? Let's see, it's this impossible yellow color at the moment, and it's almost going to burst over. And Jamie is a little bit higher than where we are. She can actually see the sun already, so off you go.
Higher up indeed, and looking at the beautiful view and waiting for the warmth of the sun rays to chase away the last of the evening's chill. No sunset is the same, or indeed sunrise, as is the case now, because that's generally what happens in the morning here. And apparently we're looking forward to a solar eclipse at 11 a.m. this morning, or at least 11 a.m. our time, so that'll be something fascinating for us to witness. But the morning waits for no one, and apparently there are 2 female lions at the Djuma Dam, so we're going to head across there first before we make our way to their kill. Let's just wait a few more seconds in silence for the sun to peek out right over the top of the horizon. Beautiful. Okay, it sounds as though, because we've actually got quite a way to go to get to those lionesses, it sounds as though Stef is closer, so I'm going to leave him to do that and start making my way towards that buffalo kill, where I'm sure we will find a now familiar scene of gore and gorging as the lions continue to finish off the buffalo and the cubs fight for their spot. I think that's what we'll do. Perhaps we're going to have a lion-filled morning this morning. No idea what that is. It's a just a quick update on Sindile. Sindile is in Buffelshoek. Thank you. Apparently my voice was disappearing, but it's come back again. Sindile decided that perhaps Djuma, land of the lions, was not the place that he wants to be for now, so he's crossed north over our boundary and into a part of the area that we cannot go. Of course, we have restrictions as to where we can drive. The different lodges all have different places that they can go. The animals have no such restrictions, and they can go wherever they want, and I wonder if they don't find it a little bit ridiculous. Although I suppose it's basically the equivalent of an animal's territory. Good morning to Andrew in Vermont. Speaking of our various leopards, of course we haven't seen the lovely Queen Karula in days. I haven't seen the lovely Queen Karula in much longer than that, but that's because I've been away. And Andrew wants to know who is our favourite leopard. Whoa, that's a difficult one, Andrew. I feel like I'm going to get myself into trouble with various fan groups of various leopards. If I had to choose, I've got a very soft spot for Thandi, Karula's daughter. Now, I love all of our leopards, and I enjoy spending time with them. I'm not quite sure what it is that I find so attractive about Thandi. I think it's her personality. She's a tiny little leopard. I mean, really tiny. When I've had her walking right up close to the vehicle, she sort of disappears. The lioness is going to drink. She kind of disappears right next to the tire. So she's really small, but she's also quite, what would be the word, spirited. Let's put it that way. We'll say she's spirited. She's definitely got plenty of spunk in her, which means that occasionally she growls and hisses, and I've seen her smack Tingana around. It's difficult to choose, but I think if I had to choose, she would be one of them, and I'm just dying to have a chance to see her new cubs, because of course I don't think any of us have seen them just yet. Some of the other lodges have, but we have not. So that's something on our to-do list of leopards to see. But it's really difficult to choose. I mean, that's like asking what's our favorite animal. Depends on the day, depends on the mood. I also have an exceptionally soft spot for young Sindile, just because of all that he's been through and the story that has evolved around him is the most incredible thing. And he was such a picture of innocence when he's still a picture of innocence, but he was such a picture of innocence when he was little, and he provided us with hours and hours of young male leopard cub entertainment before being whisked away to the wildlife rehabilitation center that he was in. And to have survived as he has after 8 months of captivity and confinement is a truly extraordinary feat. And I know that each and every single viewer has their own favorite leopard. Lots and lots of you would, of course, say the lovely Queen Karula. And as one of the oldest that we see, I can completely understand that, because her progress has been tracked throughout her life. She's an extraordinarily successful mom. She's raised many litters of healthy, happy, bouncing cubs to adulthood. So it's difficult to say. Dave, do you have a favorite leopard? Nkanyeni. So Dave is on Brent's team in that he thinks that Nkanyeni is right up there amongst his favorite leopards. I, of course, have not seen Nkanyeni, so I wouldn't know. I'm not in any way bitter about that at all, not one little bit. Okie dokie, well, since I said it's been a lion-filled morning, let us go across to Stef and find out how his search for those 2 lionesses is going, and whether or not they've started making their way back towards the buffalo kill.
Yes, we've got a long distance view of 2 lionesses across the pan at Djuma Pan, so we're going to see if we can go across there. There they are, lying on the bank. Very, very full bellies. But, and this is a big but, is I don't actually know why they're not in attendance on that carcass. I mean, it would seem from just a casual observation that they've just come for a drink of water, and that the male that was here a little bit earlier, that Chris Rogue saw roaring at the pan, has now gone and displaced them off of this buffalo carcass. But what worries me is the lack of cubs in this story. Why are moms not lying next to a fresh buffalo kill when they haven't eaten for a week? And where are the babies? What's happening to them? This is the unanswered questions that we have this morning. So there is a comment that has just come through that says that it's potentially these are the 2 lionesses that were seen mating in Buffelshoek. Yeah, that's a very feasible comment, absolutely. Lionesses are quite difficult to identify from far away like that. But what we have got is we've got Jamie, who's en route to that buffalo kill. She knows exactly where it is, so it's going to be a bit easier for her to find. And I'm sure in the next couple of minutes we'll have these questions answered. But in the meantime, I think let's just enjoy the sunrise on top of these ladies. I'm going to try and get underneath them. It's going to add a unique perspective. Not only is it massively intimidating to be next to these cats, but I'm expecting a excitement to trill through my spine by being underneath them. I'm seeing Jean-Ray looking at me with a big grin on his face, so he's obviously anticipating this as well. It is a unique thing to be underneath the lion, and a rarity in the history of human-lion interaction that it's not met with tooth and claw. Let's see if this lioness actually allows us to do that. No? Yes? They may allow us a unique silhouette against the sky in a couple of seconds. So oh, you are full. That is beautiful. A lioness in her prime. So this is Amber Eyes, I'm fairly certain of it, and therefore one of James's favorites. And there's this lioness silhouetted against this guy here. not as crisp as I thought it was going to be, but then that's why I'm not a cameraman.
Sorry, Stef.
Genre is trying his best to try and create the shot that I've predicted here. Doing a great job. I'm going to just move the sun, apparently that'll work. It looks like these lioness have potentially had a drink already. Yeah? Why are they so full? I don't know. Michael, you've just asked at what point after mating will we be able to see signs that these ladies are pregnant? Michael, to be honest with you, they don't actually show anything until a couple of days before they're born, and then only a sort of light swelling of their mammary glands. They do get heavier in the belly, and it's a different heavy, it's a different weight to food heavy. But to be honest with you, it's an educated guess at best whether they take or not. So yes, unfortunately we don't really know. But since they've been mating for the last 5 days, what you could do is set your calendar for 110 days from today. That is how long the gestation period of these mighty cats are. So set your calendar for 100 days from today, which will make it a bit easier. 100 days from today, and we should have some new lion cubs in this particular pride, and hopefully be able to predict the birth. And let's hope that they're still part of our story at that particular stage. In other words, they are looking for a den on Djuma. Christmas cubs. Louise kindly has projected the date forward already, and it looks like we're landing squarely around Christmas. And that's actually quite special, Christmas presents. So there we go. All wish for new cubs around Christmas. Maybe we're lucky and the male that was busy mating with them managed to do what he's supposed to do. Right now, they've got a belly full of something. I presume that they've been visiting that buffalo carcass. I presume that they've come for a drink. However, they're just lying here looking at nothing at the moment. And I presume they're going to make their way back to the carcass. But there are some questions that are unanswered right now. Why are they not drinking? Why are they not lying at the carcass? They have no need to drink. And why are they not lying with their sisters and their cubs? What is happening at that carcass? I'm dying to know. I do know that Jamie is off-road and approaching that carcass. So for you, at least in the next couple of minutes, some, if not all of those questions will be answered. And I'm starting to turn a little green with envy. The wonder that is this WildEarth product, this Safari Live product, is that you get to do that. And for those of you just joining us for the first time recently, we've also managed to not only jump between vehicles in different parts of this reserve, we've also managed to jump between vehicles in different countries. We did a live show from the Mara Triangle, which is in Kenya, watching the wildebeest and the zebra and all sorts, the menagerie that is the Mara Triangle at the moment, crossing and recrossing the river, getting eaten by crocodiles. Just absolutely fantastic. And the reason I'm telling you now is because with Gendre's return on the back of the camera, James also returned. He'll be in front of the camera, I think, this afternoon to tell you some more about his adventures out there. In the meantime, let me just see if I can pull the car forward a little bit. I did tell you that I was going to put you underneath the lion, and I still want to do that. For Dark Knight, you've just asked me, when do lions usually mate? Do they have a season? Well, good morning first to you, Dark Knight, and secondly, yes, there seems to be an increase in cubs in the wet season. So for us, the wet season would be from December to about March, and there seems to be a correlation with the amount of cubs born during that time and Well, and the season. I put it down to the fact that when they are being mated with, which is now in the dry season, the prey abundance is good. In other words, these cats are healthy. And because they're healthy, both the males and the females are more fertile. And I think that with less effort, more cubs get born. However, they're not like antelope, which will have a definite birthing season, or a rut and a birthing or calving season. They can have cubs at any time. So I hope that answered your question there, Dark Knight. I don't see that it's seasonal. Personally, I think it's to do with the overall health and well-being of these cats. It just makes falling pregnant easier and with less effort. And so more lions fall pregnant, and so more cubs are born. And solely because the dry season is terrible for animals and good for predators. And Jen B's just sent through a comment to say that Amber Eyes has been mating for months with no result. Jen B, okay, valid comment. It absolutely is. I actually hadn't even thought about that. I think I'll still stick with my original comment about the fact that this time of the year is a healthier time for these lions, and if she was going to fall pregnant, now would be the best time. And that she's got lots of food, healthy, giving us the stare as she goes past us at eye level. Just sit still. Okay. All right. And because she was looking into the vehicle, she had seen Genre full on there. Lions normally look up at us, and that cuts off half of our bodies. At that particular point, she was looking down into the car, and as I thought, it's actually quite nerve-wracking, to be quite honest. Hence me asking Genre just to sit still. He was swinging the camera around to show you how close these lions are to us, and she didn't like that. Let's see which direction she's going to go. She's going to go off the dam wall there, back to the carcass. All right. So let us get out of this drainage line quickly. So yes, I think if she was going to fall pregnant, now would be the best time for her to actually fall pregnant. Maybe she was a little bit compromised. Birmingham boys, even though they came into this area 6 months ago, and it took them 6 months to solidify their dominance over this particular pride, it's been a rough year for these ladies. You know, they lost sisters, they've lost cubs, they've been bashed around pretty much non-stop. And so it's understandable that that type of stress may have culminated in her being a little bit less fertile. That, and lioness can do a thing called pre-estrus, which is basically their bodies giving off many signals that they are coming into estrus, but they're not ovulating. And the reason for that is to give other males in the area, other potential males in the area, the chance to usurp once again this claim that the Birmingham boys laid over this particular pride. What are they doing? They're not coming out here. They are standing in the drainage line behind some sticks. You can just see them standing in the thicket in the center of your screen. There you go. So she may have been exhibiting some of these like pre-estrus, being a slightly older lioness. Maybe she wasn't completely convinced that these Birmingham boys actually had what it took to be the sires of the next generation of Nkuhuma cubs. And it's completely feasible that, I mean, you can understand it. The Birmingham boys did come in here with a crash and a song, and although they seem to be magnificent now, they were quite young a year ago. They weren't exactly as old as what male lion coalitions tend to be in the Kruger National Park when they finally do take over a pride. I think it's because there's sort of this male lion vacuum in the Sabi Sands. That's been happening now for about 10 years. There just doesn't seem to be enough male lions in the Sabi Sands, not for what I know as normal. I mean, I say normal, this is like what I knew 15 years ago. There were many, many more male lions 15 years ago. Until a coalition came in. What do they called? What do those guys that came in and killed all these lions called? They came in from somewhere. There are Mopojos there. The Mopojos came in and killed a lot of male lions, a lot of lions. They went on a bit of a rampage. And the Sabi Sands' male lion population hasn't really stabilized since then, and has left this vacuum. And I think that's allowed the Birmingham boys to gain a foothold here, potentially a little bit prematurely, and that is now, we're seeing that as a result with this Nkuhuma lioness. It's her job to be the custodian of the gene pool of the Nkuhumas. She makes a mistake, weak genes, and her pride will pretty much slip into oblivion, and she won't allow that to happen, not at all. So she may have been putting off ovulating for the last couple of months just to make sure. Cheryl, all the way from Oregon. Good morning, Cheryl. You've commented saying that could it be that Amber Eyes is infertile? Yes, it could actually be. There's always a chance that that a lioness becomes barren for whatever reason. Time will tell. Let's give her this good season. Let's give her this healthy season. You know, this drought and all the stress that it puts the herbivores under and the boost that it gives these predators. Let's give her this. Let's give her and the Birmingham boys the chance to build a relationship and for them to prove that they have what it takes to father the next generation of cubs. And then we'll decide on that. I'd like to think it's something a lot more pleasurable to think about. Right. Now, we've got these lioness walking in the drainage line here. I wonder if they're going to walk all the way down or if they're going to come up behind us at some point. Let's see here. Soraya, you've just asked me what a drainage line is. Soraya, a drainage line is pretty much a riverbed, a dry riverbed that drains an area of water that then runs to a bigger drainage line, which then eventually joins a river, dry or not, will eventually join a permanent river. So a drainage line is basically like the fingers of a river. If you've ever seen a photograph of the Amazon basin or the Mississippi, you would see that the river itself, before it goes into the sea, is branches into many branches, and from branches into branchlets, and from branchlets into twigs. And right, sorry, excuse me, I've got a lioness walking across the top of my head. Soraya, and so basically a drainage line is one of these twiglets. And an area that it's a depression, a linear depression that drains an area of water, would be as I would describe it. And it could be best described, I suppose, in using different nouns as a creek or a riverbed. Yeah, that's basically that as far as I know. I hope that answered your question. Alright, so we got these lioness now walking on a game path here through these thickets inside this depression. They look to be going back towards that buffalo. I think where are we going to get in there? Alright. So Jamie has finally managed to get through the bush and is now sitting next to that dead buffalo from yesterday with the rest of the Nkuhuma sisterhood. And we're going to send you through there. I'm looking forward to understanding the questions.
And here we are with the rest of the Nkuhuma pride. Hopefully the other two are on their way to join us shortly. But what a wonderful way to start off our morning. Now it is a very, very tricky position, this particular buffalo kill. And as you can see, our view is not fantastic, but here we have two lionesses and their lovely little cubs. Oops, sorry, that was loud. Hello, Stef. Tucking in with serious relish. Oh, they look very scruffy, these little cubs, and I think that's actually just because they're covered in buffalo debris, is possibly the only way to describe it. Last night, before we left, I sort of pointed out the fact that they hadn't yet opened the stomach of the buffalo. And I think that's happened at some point during the night, and the cubs have found themselves darkened by stomach contents. So it's not that they have picked up the skin disease that the Styx cubs have, it's just that they've been rolling around in some yucky stuff. But here we go, at least 3 bouncing bundles of beautiful lion cub. No, at least 4. I think I see 4 heads. You have to look really, really carefully in between the branches to spot them. And as I said this morning, there are vicious little growls emanating from them as they force their way into the buffalo kill. Are truly a marvel to behold. They certainly don't lack courage, these little creatures, growling at their moms with the full ferocity of a full-grown lion. I think perhaps the noises that the cubs have made have become one of my favourite parts of any sighting that we've shared with them. They're just so vocal. It's this constant little growling, yowling. There you go, can you hear that? Little mini tantrums on an almost minute basis. Talking. And even occasionally practicing their big boy or girl roars. Look at you little ones. And of course yesterday afternoon was the first time I'd seen them in 2 weeks, and one of our viewers, Liz, and actually probably several of our viewers, commented on the fact that I would be astounded as to how much they've grown. I'm not astounded, but I'm always a little bit sad to go away for a certain period of time, because you do miss out, and all of a sudden they're these big, well, I say big, they're much bigger than they were when I left. It's amazing the speed at which these lion cubs grow, and it's testament to the skill of the Nkuhumas that so far they've managed to provide for their brood in the most spectacular fashion. I like Stef's description as a sisterhood. Andrew in Vermont, again a lovely question coming through from you. And good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. Andrew would like to know if lions ever scare me. No, but I do have a healthy respect for them. So during the day we are of course the apex predator, but that being said, that knowledge does not always compute when you're on foot and all of a sudden the bushes start making sounds roughly equivalent to sort of 5 or so Harley Davidsons starting up at the same time. So a lion roar, or lion growl at least, is the kind of sound that will raise the hairs on the back of your neck and definitely get your heart racing. So yes, I suppose, I'm not going to lie and be macho about it. Yes, I suppose it is. I would say they've scared me before. Never in the vehicle so far. I've been very fortunate. I've had 1 or 2 moments where I've been staring at the lion and the lion's been staring at me, but I wouldn't call that fear. It's a very sort of basic, almost instinctive response to that look. And lions really do. I still don't buy into this whole theory that lions don't see people in cars. I think that they absolutely do. They recognize individuals. It's just that they don't feel threatened by us. Nighttime, of course, is a whole different ballgame, and that is when lions come into their own, and that is when human beings would be very wise to respect their space and their skill. Very wise, or alternately very dead. We try and avoid we do definitely try and avoid walking in the bush at night. And we've had a few experiences recently, because they've been close to human habitation, where they've glanced in the direction of people wandering about in a way that is not entirely comfortable. You don't need to be scared of the animals out here. Nothing here is out to attack you, but they do deserve a tremendous amount of respect. Our little cubs, as we spoke about before, are covered in buffalo stomach contents. There's no other way of putting it. In red, yes, the lions always discard stomach contents. So what often happens in situations where they've caught something small is they will consume it. Or if it's a sort of a lone lioness, she might actually remove the stomach contents and bury it, and then move the carcass further away. And the reason behind that is that the stomach contents are the things that start to smell the strongest, the fastest, which of course is guaranteed to attract scavengers, which is why leopards will always disembowel their prey and then move it away from where they made the actual kill. So there's no real nutritional value. Sometimes they lick the walls of the intestines or the stomach, but that's more for the meat surrounding it. They do not have the digestive process capable of dealing with huge amounts of grass. So they never eat the intestines in the stomach. Hyenas will. They'll munch away on it for a bit, and the vultures will come and peck away, so that by the end of this buffalo carcass in the next 4 or 5 days, everything except some of the bones will be completely consumed. But they do like to roll in it on the odd occasion, which means that lions at a kill are not pristine looking, let's put it that way. This little cub that you can just see on the bottom of your screen. Ooh. Can you hear that bird? Lovely bird call. Haven't heard that in a while. There's a boo-boo that was calling there. But yes, that little cub looks like it's been rolling in green sludge, which is quite revolting. But they're having a ball. And like all children, a little bit of muck is really not a problem. Look at that cub getting tucked in there. Contorting itself to get at the intercostal muscles of the ribs. Something that we chatted about yesterday, the fact that it's not easy to be a little lion cub with little jaws and little teeth to try and get and tear off pieces of meat. Oh! Yummy! Aren't you grubby looking? Now, I said in the next 4 or so days this entire buffalo carcass will be gone, but that does not mean that the lions won't be finished it before then. Bull, I honestly have no idea how big this buffalo was. I think it's a buffalo bull, which would have put it at between sort of, depending on his condition, maybe between 700, 900 kilograms, which is over 1,000 pounds, which makes the fact that 3 Nkuhuma lionesses took it down particularly impressive. But to be honest, it's very difficult to tell. It might also have been a slightly smaller buffalo, a female perhaps. I don't think it's a sub-adult. I think it is an adult buffalo. But because of the position that they're in, I haven't had a proper opportunity to see exactly how big their prey is. And it is an extraordinary feat. When you think about it, a lioness, maybe 150 kilograms, and that's being generous, although the Nkuhumas are not little ladies. They're particularly big lionesses. But one lioness weighing 150 kilograms, working with the rest of her pride to bring down something that is five times her weight. The potential for disaster is enormous, and yet it's something that they have to do every 3 days, or every 4 days, or however often it happens to be. Run that risk of serious injury or death, which of course is exactly what the risk that the buffalo runs as well. And as with any lion sighting while they're sitting feasting off a meal, accompanied by the cacophony of low growls and gentle snarls. We're going to wait for our chance to acquire a better position in this particular sighting. So while we do that, let's go across to Stef, who is also playing the patience game.
That's right, we are just playing a patience game. We've now hopscotched down the Mawati drainage line to see if the lioness don't carry on coming down, and they haven't passed us. And we are standing by. I mean, admittedly the bush around us is very thick, and they may have actually crossed up onto Twin Dams Road, which is what we're going to go and have a look at now. Sitting here puzzling out what we've seen and experienced this morning, I do know that these two lioness and the male that came down to the pan killed a baby buffalo yesterday in the morning, and that would account for their belly. So I'm saying that these two lioness have not gone to that buffalo. It didn't come from the buffalo that Jamie is with, that you've just seen, to the pan for a drink. I think they've just made their way into Djuma from Buffelshoek, and they full from the young buffalo calf that they swallowed yesterday. And they're still looking for their sisters. But why are they not walking towards the buffalo? Surely they can hear the feeding, or they can hear the cubs. I mean, you'd think that they do. These lions sometimes do the supernatural, but we don't really know. And another thing is they may have just gone to bed in here, to be quite honest. They may have just relaxed in the shade, having a full belly like that. There's lots of deep shade on the side of the Mawati here. They may have just relaxed a little bit and will join their sisters a bit later. All these questions with these lions, it adds a delicious spice to the morning, not really knowing what's going on here, just putting the pieces together. We've walked through here a lot, Jeandre and I, and there's lots of deep shade inside here that'll actually be very nice for these lionesses to lie in. But we've got the cubs having a meal on that carcass at the moment, so without further ado, off you go.
Now, wouldn't you love to know the secret lines of communication between the different lionesses? Because I strongly suspect that Amber Eyes and the young female that Stef had earlier know about this buffalo carcass, and yes, certainly they might have heard the deep growls that accompany feeding, or perhaps they don't know at all that this buffalo carcass is here, and they're just busy seeing if they can't find the rest of their pride by a combination of smell and then also just knowing the different areas that they move about in. Speaking of smell, of course, this position that Dave and myself are in comes with a gentle aroma of slowly rotting buffalo carcass. Not too bad yet. Wait, Dave. 2 days' time, we're going to know all about it. Now, I've been trying to work out what's happening with the rest of the lion cubs, and I think that the other cubs, the younger cubs, are actually slightly off away from us in this really, really dense vegetation in the drainage line. In fact, I don't think, I know they are. I can sort of, or I could sort of see them in between the trees. Little flashes of tawny gambling about. So I think the youngest set, at least the youngest set of cubs, is down there. And Liz, strangely enough, you and I, not strangely enough, but you and I happen to be in agreement. Liz has said that she's glad that one of the Birmingham boys didn't decide to come and muscle in on this particular feast. And of course, male lions are incredibly useful creatures for the lionesses. They are a fantastic hyena deterrent, and as the father of these cubs, play a very, very important role in protecting them. But they're not very good at sharing. And a male lion, being a good 200 pounds heavier than the females, can consume far more, and generally hogs the carcass until he has eaten his full, not allowing the lionesses even so much as a little nibble. Although they've been seen sharing with the cubs, which makes sense because they're their offspring. But Liz, I'm sort of with you on that. I'm glad that the Nkuhuma ladies have had a chance to keep this meal to themselves and the cubs. And that's a question that I've actually been wondering myself as we watch the sort of growling, snarling conflict that the lions go through every time they have a carcass. Mobile Paddy would like to know if the lionesses show any kind of favoritism in terms of feeding towards their own cubs. I was actually thinking about that yesterday because I made this sort of straight up assumption that the lioness that was feeding next to the cubs was the mom. And she might have been, but she might not have been. And I honestly don't know the answer. Is there any favoritism there?
I just had a flash.
Do you have a flash of cub? There you go. Well done, Dave. Oh, little one. Oh, they're still wonderful. Those little ones are still all wobbly and cute and adorable. They're not fierce predators just yet. Mobile Paddy, in answer to your question, I don't think so. That's just my assumption of the facts. But I honestly don't know if there's any favoritism towards different cubs. It makes sense biologically, sort of, but then at the same time, the fact that lionesses will suckle in an indiscriminate way, both their cubs and other cubs, suggests to me that feeding time would be much the same. Basically, it's growl at everybody and all alike, and possibly batter the cub that gets a little bit too brave and too close. Lion meal times are not sedate family dinners where everybody sits around the table with a knife and fork. Although those of you with teenage boys, maybe siblings, perhaps you're more familiar with this style of competition over food. My stomach's rumbling as I said that. I said that these lionesses have to do this on a pretty much every 3 or 4 day basis. Kale wants to know how long they could go without food. Welcome, Kale, to the sunrise safari. The answer is quite a long time. You know, kind of like human beings. We can go, depending upon your size, 3 weeks without, the average human, about 3 weeks without food. Myself, probably about 3 hours, but there's a spectrum in between. Whereas with lions, it'll be exactly the same. So they can often go up to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but then you're starting to see them looking incredibly weak. And the difficulty is, of course, is that once they get to that point, then they don't have the strength to go and hunt for themselves. Although, I have seen lionesses do the most extraordinary things. I've seen a lioness with a broken leg hunt and kill an impala. The speed that she moved on 3 limbs was absolutely phenomenal. So you're probably looking at about 2 or 3 weeks, but then the lion is going to be in terrible condition. At around 7 days, they start to look scrawny, hungry. 8 days, then they really seriously. Such fierce sounds. Well, if Amber Eyes and the young female didn't know they were here, they must surely have been able to hear that. I don't know what is so innately amusing about the sounds that they make. Very good point from Shamsun, which is that if the lionesses really wanted to, they would indeed contact call to find their sisters, and that perhaps Amber Eyes and the young female had perhaps just wanted some adult time and some time away from the cubs. And one could hardly blame them, really, because youngsters of all description can be quite exhausting. So I imagine Amber Eyes and the young female perhaps did want a little bit of time, free from their tails being bitten and their ears being chewed and not being able to sleep. The mothers don't have that luxury, but Amber Eyes and the young female do. So yes, they could absolutely call. They probably will when they get a little bit closer, unless they know already about this kill. I certainly think that they are on their way to try and find them. natural instincts coming into play. Now, speaking of our other lionesses and their progress in terms of finding and rejoining their sisters, let's go and see how Stef's patience game has played out.
Thank you, Jamie. Not much of a patience game on my side, unfortunately. I got bored of waiting for them to come down the river, and I think that they've either crossed out onto Twin Dams Road or they're lying up in the shade, I think. So if their tracks don't come out on Twin Dams, I think they've taken a bit of a rest, lying up with one another, being sisters, and are just enjoying that buffalo busy digesting in their tummies. And I suppose having had a week's worth of mating attentions from a male, also just taking some time out. So if they don't come out on Twin Dams, I think my prognosis would be that they are lying somewhere in the shade here, and they'll come out later on today, potentially joining their sisters on that buffalo carcass. There's a very, very good chance that they do that. And yes, just to finish off a point that Jamie made, they will use contact calls to contact one another. The lioness pride as a unit will want to stick together. They won't want to split, and there are not that many lioness in this particular pride that it's necessary for them to split across their territory just yet. I think the very reason that we have these lioness on this morning is because of this need to come together. So if tracks don't come out here, and this is where we lost them, this is where I just want to keep a weather eye open over here, see what's going on. More and more bits and pieces of the puzzle of this morning are falling into place. That was alarm calling when we walked to our vehicles this morning. No doubt was calling at these lioness. I thought that they'd be called, or the bushbuck was calling at Stef, who, when we left him last night, being a young male leopard, when we left him last night, he was pointed directly at the Djuma pan on Aubrey's Road, about 2 miles or so from the pan itself, and you know, one of the two sources of water that he could have gone to. But yes, as so often happened, you know, what you think is then. Our signal's jumpy here, so we're going to put you back through to Jamie and finish up later.
Well, Stef's signal may be jumpy, but so are our little lion cubs. And in a wonderful turn of affairs, the third mother came up with her bundle of little cubs in tow. So there are now bundles of cubs wandering about, playing with each other. And we've just got to hope that, oh, look at you. It's one of the youngest ones with the little spots still all over its face. We've just got to hope that they decide to move more into the open at some point. Nevertheless, a scene of familial contentment, sort of. Here we go. The third lioness tucking in, keeping up her strength. She's probably, as the mother, I think it's the mother of the youngest cubs. And as a result, she might actually be the last female that is lactating. So all of the cubs will have a chance to feed from her, but it does mean that her body is under considerable stress in terms of resources. Not for too much longer though. Even the youngest of the Nkuhuma cubs are approaching the age where they will no longer get to suckle. It's just flashes of little tails and ears and... oh, it's exhausting work eating a buffalo. One of our viewers yesterday pointed out the flat ears that the cubs have whenever they go and feed and compete with the females for food. It's amazing how that instinct immediately plays out, even at such a young age. Oh, in the head goes into the carcass itself. So everything, I was actually quite surprised yesterday by the fact that the lionesses hadn't removed the stomach contents straight away. Generally the first parts of a buffalo carcass to be eaten are the livers, the heart, the kidney, the lungs, the most nutritious parts of that, and the easiest to eat in terms of being a lion and getting to the meat. But yesterday they'd only nibbled away a little bit around the backside of the buffalo. Perhaps just it was easier to get in there. But now all of that is gone, and they have to really content themselves with the hard jobs of peeling back the skin and getting to the meat underneath. But a buffalo carcass like this will keep the lionesses, even if the other two join them, well fed for at least 2, maybe 3 days. So worth the risk in terms of hunting it down. Oh, some sisterly snarling. But as we said yesterday, it's a lot of sound and fury and bluster. Not too much actual physical injury or aggression. I think the cubs have decided that perhaps feeding next to one adult female is one thing, but 3 is a little bit more difficult, and that perhaps now is a far better time just for playtime in the cool of the morning. Come on, little ones, come do that here, please. Now, the one marvelous thing about these live safaris is that we basically get to spend an unprecedented amount of time with the lions and the cubs and the characters of the various animals. And Kathy, who has been watching in Tennessee, says that she's noticed that there are some cubs that seem more aggressive than others of a similar age, and was wondering if they would go on to be more assertive personalities when they get older. Kathy, I'm a very firm believer, particularly with all animals, but it's particularly so with the big cats, that each one has their own distinctive personality. And yes, I definitely think that some are more assertive than others from birth. They start to develop and display those characteristics. I also think, though, there's a good chance that some of them are males. I mean, I know that some of these cubs are males. That might also explain that slightly extra level of aggression. But we've got to be careful of making assumptions like that. It might just be that that particular aggressive cub is feeling very hungry, and therefore is being more assertive than it might otherwise be. So they're difficult assumptions to make, and it's sort of better and better, or we'll get to know them better and better as time goes on. But I would not be surprised at all if we see developing little personalities from each of the cubs and get to know them individually, although they're getting very difficult to recognize. Can I distract us from this lion sighting for one moment? Let me see, please stay. I found a spider on Brent's shuka that he very kindly left for me in case I got cold as a leg blanket. You see it there, Dave?
Just, yeah.
So tiny. Wait, don't go away. Don't go away. Oh, get my hat out of the way. One very tiny but actually very beautiful spider. Oh, we're going down that way now. Now we've acquired a lovely little... Oh, now I've acquired a lovely little friend. Where are you going? Don't go down my sleeve, please. That would not be... Oh. I'm going to try and move my new friend to a slightly more convenient spot. And while I do that, let's go and have a look at the little antelope that Stef has found.
There's quite a nice story that's unfolding here for you. That's obviously a grey duiker with a black tail stripe and diminutive size. But the story that is here is that there's the tree growing out of the terma mound, fruiting. It's a jackalberry tree, giant jackalberry tree, and in the branches of the jackalberry tree is a troop of vervet monkey. And what they're doing is they're feeding, and vervet monkey feed incredibly messily. And the husks and the discarded pips of the jackalberry are falling onto the floor, and the grey duiker is eating those husks and pips. And that's the story. It's how the grey duiker is utilizing the messy habits of the monkey to feed itself today on the fruits of the jackalberry tree. There's a monkey there on the knobthorn just to the right of the tree. He's down a little bit further, oh no, not further down. Come down. Difficult to see exactly which monkey they are. There is monkeys in there, I promise. They are moving around in there and they are kicking jackalberries off that the duiker is eating. We'll see them now. Let me go a little bit closer for you. There's one. No. As we've moved up, I think they've gone to go now eat at the back end of the tree there. Let's see here. There's one's face over there. There's a couple of them. Inside there, up in the top of the screen. There we go, there's one. Told you there were monkeys. It's just such a great jackalberry tree. I've forgotten about my quest looking at this jackalberry tree. Its twin, or not twin, its brother, the weeping boerbean. We were on a quest for finding one that was fruiting about a week ago. And looking at this fruiting, or flowering, excuse me, and looking at this fruiting jackalberry has made me want to revive that quest. And first we're looking at these vervet monkeys. They hang around here in small troops and are a great help to us in relocating and finding leopard on the property. Very vigilant, as you can see. Have a look, there's the jackalberry fruits. And let's see what he does. Let's see if you can see him eating. He may discard the husk. And you'll see how he'll just drop it. And that is what the diminutive, there we go, you can see him drop it with hardly even having tasted it, and that is exactly what the grey duiker is busy eating. And in actual fact, where this tree gets its name from, the jackalberry, it's not uncommon to find jackal in some areas also feeding on the discarded fruit from monkeys. There, dropped another one. You can see it literally is raining fruit down. And would be an absolutely fantastic source of nourishment for that grey duiker. And for these monkeys, in actual fact. There, stretching. Look at him standing on his back legs on that branch. Oh, he's resting his back against the twig, that's why. Just busy peeling the husk out. The fruit itself tastes quite bready. It's a mealy type of fruit. We can actually eat it. It's not dangerous for humans to eat, but it doesn't taste very nice. James, I think, has eaten one or two of this season's crop. And there's perhaps a way of selecting the right jackalberry. Perhaps the easier thing to do would be to take a discarded husk from one that a monkey has thrown away and taste it compared to another jackalberry picked off of a branch, and perhaps they'll taste different. But for me, I've always just tasted mealy dryness. Almost prune-like actually in how it tastes, or date-like actually is probably the better way of putting it. Tastes like a date. This is fantastically blue sky behind that monkey at the moment. Anna Marie, you've just commented by saying that, okay, we're sending you over to Jamie. There's some lions coming in that kill.
And here we have the arrival of Amber Eyes. She's found them at last. Coming in from, I have to say, the completely unexpected direction, which is further to the south of where we are. Hello, gorgeous. You know, oh, she's got a very full stomach. They must have had a kill at some point in the last few days, because she is not a hungry-looking lioness. Now, we spoke about favourite leopards and the fact that it's very difficult to choose. And the same applies for lions, of course, but if I had to choose, she would be my favourite. I absolutely adore Amber Eyes. And whenever there seems to be action, Amber Eyes is right in the thick of it. Now, let's see how this interaction goes and the reunion with her sisters and their cubs. Oh, she's gorgeous. Moving right next to the vehicle. So I'm just going to keep my voice down. There's always a slight tentativeness in her approach. She doesn't know which lions, I mean, she will know that her sisters are here, but she doesn't know what else is around. So she is going to approach with a degree of care, giving us a beautiful view of that ridge that runs along the top of her head and down the back of her neck, particularly prominent in Amber Eyes. And I see her scar has started to disappear on her shoulder. What's there, girl? Here comes the young lioness. And joining in. Come on, guys. Go say hello. Go say hello. Amber Eyes called Amber Eyes because she's got amber eyes, and we're very inventive when it comes to naming things. We definitely step right out of the box, but she does have the most glorious eye, sort of orangey eye colour. Christy, yes, I think when she does have cubs, there is a very good chance that she's going to pass that amber eye gene on to them. I'm not sure exactly whether or not it is a recessive gene, or perhaps it is an alternative explanation. It's obviously genetic. One thing I can tell you is that I've recently come from the reserve that I used to work at. I actually didn't spend much time looking at the eye colour of the lions there while I was working there. It's something that I've only started to notice properly since I started working at Safari Live. Oh, fair enough. And a joyous greeting indeed, as she lay down in the shade to rest and recover from her very full belly. Sorry, but the one thing I did notice is that the amber eyes, on that particular reserve where I used to work, there's lots and lots of lions with amber eyes. So it's clearly genetic. It might even be area-based. But I've got a few pictures of the lions there that are very brown-eyed, similar to amber eyes. So yes, I think she could well pass that gene on. You might even see it in some of the little cubs, even that aren't hers, as they start to grow older. So having a snuffle around. What we get? You do know there's a big buffalo over there, girl? Or are you just too full to be terribly bothered? The young lioness has made her way slightly closer, but still not a full reunion just yet. Instead going back towards Amber Eyes. Something's happened around there. She's having a jolly good sniff, interested in whatever's going on. While Stef was discussing Amber Eyes and the fact that she hasn't had cubs yet, and of course neither is the young female, though for the young female that's to be expected because it's her first few estrus cycles of her life. A strange thought struck me, and I have no idea if this is the case, it's just a thought, that perhaps it makes sense to have some lionesses in estrus whilst others have young cubs. We know that lionesses synchronize their estrus cycle to some degree, but perhaps it makes sense to have young cubs and a couple, maybe one or two females in the pride, to mate with the males and keep them distracted. Oh, who's there? Who's there? Auntie Amber Eyes. Go say hello. Cute. Even Nami's absolutely right. Even if Amber Eyes doesn't have cubs, she certainly makes a fantastic aunt. Look at that tentative approach. Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh, you're so brave. Oh, you are a big brave lioness. Are those cubs quite scary? That was awesome. All part of playtime. I think it might have been that she's teaching the cubs that they're big, bad and scary predators, building up their confidence, or she might be scared of Mom, which, you know, is a fair enough response. Ah, there we go. That's the greeting we were waiting for. And the cubs, emboldened by the presence of Mom, going to say hello. Oh, Amber. Impatient aunt. Excuse me. Collection of little cubs. Will you play with me? No? Okay. Fine. Like that. Will you play with me? It's amazing how every kind of vocalization that we get from the lionesses is immediately met by a cacophony of sounds from the little cubs. And that was such a lovely scene. Oh, no. It's wonderful to see you again, Auntie Amber Eyes and Auntie Young Female, who definitely needs a name, because Auntie Young Female doesn't sound particularly good. But it's not quite enough to distract them from the prospect of a buffalo breakfast. Within the lioness's pride, you generally don't have a massive hierarchy, although often hunts are initiated, or movement is initiated by some of the older females. We do have a question, because I've said that Amber Eyes is always in the thick of the action, whether or not she is in fact the leader of the pride, or sort of the matriarch of the pride. And David, in Napa, lovely to have you on board. I wouldn't say that. She's not the oldest female. The oldest female is apparently the sort of the mother of all of the Nkuhuma females. She's one of the ones with young cubs. She's the mom of the middle set of cubs, unless I'm very much mistaken. She's the oldest and most experienced. But certainly, what we were talking about with animal characters, certainly I think that Amber Eyes is particularly... Oh, giving us a phlegm and grimace there. I don't know if she's a particularly bold lioness or particularly aggressive lioness. So whilst I wouldn't say she's the leader, she certainly is one of the members of the pride that takes a great deal of initiative. And the reason she responded like that to the cub earlier, she growled at it, is because she's on edge. She's been mating for the last few days, even though she has managed to have some food. She's probably been, whenever a lioness mates, or any of the big cats, their aggression levels are seriously hyped up. Of course, every time they mate, they turn around and they bash the male, and he gets cross and she gets cross. And if she's been sharing a kill with male lions, she might also be more on edge. So it'll just take her some time to readjust to the squalling, squabbling cubs. And a very, very good question from Sandy in Missouri, and it's something that we've been watching play out over the last few weeks. Starting, of course, with that extraordinary explosion of sound and fury that we had just before I went on leave when Hayden was still here. So Sandy's confused about the male lions and their personalities because they're dominant over the lionesses, but we've seen recently the lionesses ganging up on the males and the males backing off and backing away. She wants to know a little bit more in detail, and it's quite a complex answer. So what often happens with lionesses and their cubs is that their fuses are particularly short. They feel very protective over the little cubs, and that means that they explode out in a very aggressive manner very quickly. The lions are dominant over the lionesses, but only when it really, really counts. And that means when there is a lioness in estrus or when there is food. Beyond that, if they put a toe out of line and the lionesses respond aggressively, it's not worth being injured by a ball of fury. And whilst the lionesses are smaller and less dominant, they are more than capable of inflicting some relatively serious injuries if they want to. So for the most part, with all predators, they try and avoid injury, and they try and avoid things escalating to the point of really using teeth and claws to the maximum. And as a result, I think that's why often the male lions back off unless it is something particularly that they feel strongly about fighting for, which inevitably with male lions is food and females. The females are just on a short fuse, and you don't mess with a lioness and her cubs, or any female animal and their offspring. Okay guys, I just need to hop onto the game drive channel. There are other vehicles that want to come through into the sighting. We've had a wonderful reunion, but I think it might be time for us to go. So while we do that and we have a quick chat on the game drive channel, let's head across to Stef.
We have a mystery here at the moment. We've got the big male lion came walking down here this morning after leaving Voyatelapan, but we've got squirrels just here in that marula tree, busy alarm calling like nothing I've heard in a while, and I'm wondering if there isn't a leopard or something else here. Look at that southern tree squirrel. This particular squirrel is not giving an alarm call, but the one on the other side of the tree is. I want to see if we can see them. I don't quite know what has flown in here. There could be it's probably a bird of prey, but you never quite know with these things, you know. There could be a leopard hiding around over here as easily as there could be a pale chanting goshawk or something, or a dark chanting goshawk here. Or this male lion in actual fact. So I think it does warrant a closer inspection. Let's see what type of tracks that we have over here, or what we can see. And if nothing else, it will allow us a nice view of an alarm calling squirrel, which is so often what Brent uses and what we all use. Where is this squirrel? The one that's calling is up on that dead branch there, facing away from us. So we've got a squirrel on the floor. We've got a squirrel alarm calling. I wonder if there isn't a snake here. Go down there in the center, yeah. There you can see that little body vibrating with the strength of his alarm call. Shame. Something's really upset him. Shame, man. I know I have. Alright, there's some lion cubs that are busy playing around that carcass. You don't want to miss that.
In a wonderful turn of events, the lion cubs have decided to come out into the open and give us a display of their fighting skills. And such skills that they are. Oh. Bye then. Trotting off back to Mom, and back to the buffalo kill. We've still got one little one. Making the little niggling sounds that they so often do. Oh, look at how fluffy it is. Sorry. I know that was a very girly thing to comment on, but I couldn't help myself. Oh, here comes Amber. Treated with much respect from the little cub. Didn't even dare swatting at her. And of course, back to the young lioness, who's decided to plop herself right down next to the vehicle, just behind a tambuiti tree. Oh, exhausted. Okay, contented, full bellies. They found their sisters and the niggling cubs, and they've got this perfect patch of shade, which happens to be right next to the vehicle. Oh, one bold little cub coming over to investigate on. Ooh. Message received loud and clear. Amber Eyes, you're not in a good mood this morning, huh? It's okay. The cubs have other things to occupy themselves with. One, two, three, four, five. Stunning. Must be the 5 oldest cubs. There is a very noticeable difference. Absolutely wonderful. I think Amber Eyes is just cross because it's been a long mating period. Her tolerance is waning thin. Look at you, you mucky creature. You've got breakfast all over your face. Now, where are you going? Going adventuring. Two slightly younger ones occupying their time, having a very lazy horizontal fight. Such a noticeable size difference. Ooh. Goodness. Let's keep our movements nice and slow. The cubs have now put the vehicle between us and Mom. Oh, when did you get there? What an interesting surprise you are. I didn't even see you sneaking down the back, you sneaky little thing. Did you climb under the car? Look at you. Your dirty face. This is absolutely awesome. And Dave, just make sure you know sudden movements. We spoke about the lioness's fuses being a little bit short. We've seen what they do to the males. I don't feel quite as resilient as a male lion, and I would prefer not to experience that aspect of their personality. Oh, cute. Where are you going? There's another adult. She must have gone around the back. Okay. That's a much more comfortable situation to be in. There's lions coming out of the woodwork everywhere. Cubs all spread out. And you? Are you the fearsome tree climber? It's a big, wide, scary world when you're a little lion cub, and there's lots to explore, lots of learning to do. And scenes like this are just magic. What's that? What's that? That big scary auntie coming to get you. Nope, that's not going to work, little one. Let's just watch how the situation plays out. One of the mums is now going up to the cubs. You can see she's still got suckle marks. Oh, and a little injury, probably from that buffalo hunt. And Michael, look at this interaction. Very sweet. The youngest female and then one of the mothers, looking for a nice comfortable spot to lie down with their enormous bellies. Oh, oh, milk bar's open, or not. Michael wants to know, when the lionesses wean the cubs, will the intervals between hunting shorten as the demand for the cubs to feed the cubs grows more and more pressing? Yes, it will. The lionesses will be pushed to hunt as often as possible, and the bigger the cubs get, the more food they're going to need, which sounds like the most profound statement I've ever made, but just think about it. They've got 8 cubs, and they are going to get big very quickly. Luckily, if they invest the time and energy now, then depending on how many females they have, they've got an enormous increase to their ranks, and therefore an increase in the things that they can tackle. Not just yet, though. These cubs have a little bit more growing to do before they've reached that point. I mean, that one's pretty fierce looking, but I don't think quite at the hunting buffalo stage just yet. Maybe hunt a brother instead. Hey. Oh, practice that neck-biting technique. Impressive. Follow through could use some work. Oh, I hope you're getting some incredible screenshots. Such fierce predators. Okay, let's do a head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cubs. 6, 7. Where's number 8? Sorry, I'm trying to keep my head out of the view, but trying to watch at the same time. It's getting very tricky. And if I lean too far out to the other side, my head's going to be level with Amber Eyes, which I'd prefer to avoid, given her current mood. Aha! There's number 8. Things are getting tricky. Our little lion cub's right up next to the vehicle. Sorry. Well, our wishes have come true, and sitting waiting with the poorest seat in the house has led to us having the best seat in the house. Enormous oversized feet.
The station is the tracks of that single male lion.
I think Brent said it very well yesterday, in that there are some sightings that don't necessarily need words. And this is one of them. Some of the cubs have decided to wash down their breakfast of buffalo with some milk. Fresh lion milk. A diet of champion lions. straight over Amber Eyes. This seems to be the biggest cub, in my opinion. Maybe little male. Let's see. Such a perfect moment. It's just stunning. Sorry. Every time I laugh, I start to cough. But these lion cubs are too comic not to. I love the way they're being watched by a younger cousin. Not quite old enough to join in the rough and tumble of their games, but definitely interested. Oh, getting cross. Get him. Oh, you are so filthy dirty. I think this is the two oldest females of this particular group of cubs. Oh, gently now. Oh, the tail will do. Tail's the best toy. Get it. Get it. Simply wonderful. We've been lucky enough in the past to see the Nkuhumas adults play like this. Not quite as often as the cubs, but they do still carry over those cub-like tendencies right into adulthood. As they continue to play and practice hunting with each other. Oh! That was some serious self-discipline for one, to not attack those flicking tails. I think the prospect of milk a bit too attractive. Oh, and after a hard morning, little cub has gone straight to sleep. Too sweet. I'm going to make a little bit of noise now, so bear with me. I'm just shifting the microphone out of my hat, because we are right up close to another vehicle, so just bear with me. Here we go. How does that sound, Dave? Okay, cool. Just trying to keep my voice down as much as possible, as well as my head. Oh, such an exhausting day. Look at the little one with the tail at the back. Oh, he got sat on. I might be imagining things, but I think that's the most disgruntled expression I've ever seen Amber Eyes pull. She looks exhausted and put upon. Kind of like, seriously? I've been dealing with a male, fighting over food, and now I've got to deal with these squabbling, squalling little creatures. And as things settle down, and the cubs start to relax a little bit, let's jump on the back with Stef and find out what he's up to.
We tracked the lion as far as we could, and his tracks cross out south at Twin Dams, which is not too much of a problem. I mean, he's going to come back. All these ladies and all these cubs are lying on a buffalo in the middle of Djuma, so I have no doubt that he's just going to re-establish some territorial markers. He's been in the north in Buffelshoek mating for a few days and eating some baby buffalo, and now he's gone to the south of his territory, which lies just off of Djuma in Chitwa, and on their airstrip in actual fact. I think sometimes they make forays down onto the Mala Mala boundary, which is not too much further from there, but all done and said, I think he's just gone for a quick patrol. Male lion do that from time to time. We've got a Franklin here. I know it's an innocent looking Franklin, but to be honest, they're actually quite nice too. Dark Knight, you've asked me if you asked me if male coalitions run away if they're attacked by other male lions. Absolutely. Wow, what is that noise? Excuse me just listening for a bit, folks. There's massive elephant trumpeting going on. I literally switched off the car there, and there's just maybe, I don't know, the 30 elephant or so screaming at the same time. Excuse me poking my ears forward. You know, it's the only way people of my advanced guiding age get to hear anything. Let's go there. Something is happening with some elephant in front of us, and I want to know what. They are unhappy about something. Could be anything really, to be quite honest. There's a helicopter flying around. It could be the helicopter. It could be a distress call from a youngster that's stuck, it sounds like, perhaps. It could be them having found a predator and are trumpeting at it to get away. It could be one stuck in the mud. It could be any number of different things, to be honest. It could just be elephant trumpeting. They do that from time to time. But definitely noteworthy and worth us going to investigate. So just to finish off my comment about male lions being chased away, they absolutely can get chased away. In actual fact, the Birmingham boys, the male lions that hold the coalition together over the Nkuhumas, those ladies you're watching on the buffalo, the male lions chased away the male lions that were in residence and the dominant males over the Nkuhumas before. And as far as I understand, the Matimba coalition are residing peacefully on Mala Mala on the Sand River, enjoying a retirement basically. Okay, now I just want to switch off and listen again. So, you know, in conclusion, it absolutely can happen, and it doesn't necessarily always need to result in a lion's death, apparently. I always thought that it was different. So I'm still hearing a helicopter, but that helicopter is a bit further away from where these elephants are trumpeting. They're not trumpeting anymore. Helicopters in the Sabi Sands are used for any variety of reason. Generally speaking, they can be used for patrolling. It's a very easy way of patrolling. And secondly, they're used for game counts, which is fairly common. On the floor here, we've got a flock of white helmeted shrikes busy feeding. And they are some of the most striking little birds that we have out here. A very yellow eye patch and this funny mask or ruff around their head. They, funnily enough, build their nests out of spider webs. So they will collect spider webs as soon as the spiders come out, and they will weave spiders' web around a small lattice work of sticks. And then to that spider's web, stick bits and pieces of lichen and leaf matter to camouflage the nest. Just another ingenious way that birds figure out how to safeguard their eggs and their nestlings and themselves, really. It's no wonder these elephant are upset. This helicopter seems to be circling something or other. Very, very loud. You may actually even be able to hear it off in this particular direction. I don't know, the question is it a wise choice to go racing off where angry elephant and helicopter are? Yes. Probably not so wise, but I'm going to do it anyway. Go and see what is happening. Ex-Ranger, you're absolutely right there. Perhaps the elephant are just wanting some airtime. With all the lion activity that we've had recently, they've taken a bit of a back seat. Yes, absolutely possible. Let's go and find out exactly how feasible that particular comment is. We're now in the area where I thought I heard them, or at least approaching where I thought I heard them. So let's carry on going over here and see exactly what we can uncover. This is an area of Djuma that hasn't seen a lot of vehicle traffic in a while, mainly because it's a bit far away from permanent water. It sort of sits on a watershed between the water source at Arethusa and Vuyatela, and then in this direction here towards Chitwa, and just about equidistant from all those dams: Red Dam, Arethusa Dam, Vuyatela and Chitwa. I just want to have a look at this weeping boerbean tree and see if there's any flowers on it. As I said, I'd like to resuscitate or resurrect my quest for finding a flowering boerbean and its attendant very fancy animals. But this one is not flowering. James Richards, you've just sent through, I suppose, a bit of information and then also a question that you've heard that the weeping boerbean has been also called the drunken parrot tree due to the fact that it has excess nectar that sometimes ferments, and then the birds eat this and it's a mild narcotic and they get a bit drunk. James, I'm gonna say that that's probably a bit of folklore. There's no doubt that the tree exudes an excess of nectar. It's what makes the tree such a fantastic tree to view at this time of the year when everything else is pretty much barren. As to the fruit and this nectar fermenting into a mild narcotic, that's once again feasible, that a high dose of concentrated sugars can over time ferment with the right type of yeasts and things that are around and do occur naturally here. Parrots walking around or birds walking around looking like they are drunk, I doubt that. And the reason why I doubt that is I actually think that the feeding frenzy that is associated to one of these boerbean flower explosions, that is a cardinal woodpecker that we are trying heroically to try and show you. So I think that it's joining dots that are a little bit too far apart for me. All right, so I've just got a report on what that helicopter is doing. The helicopter is actually doing the Sabi Sand midwinter game count, which is a very common thing that happens around here. They fly these transects twice a year, in midwinter and midsummer, or mid-dry season, mid-wet season, and they do a correspondence game count between the game numbers they count in the summer and the winter, but it also gives a nice indication over time as to what effect certain things are having. So is there a population increase? What populations are increasing? What populations decrease? What effect is the closing of the Kruger National Park's water holes having to the population of animals in the Sabi Sands? That would be one of the questions that people will try and answer from the data collected. So the helicopter flies this grid pattern basically, and will fly the same grid pattern at the same altitude at the same time of year every year for as long as what they can do it. And that over time builds up patterns and trends. For the larger antelope, for the things that are easier counted, it becomes a realistic way of counting animals in the park. For the smaller things or the things that like to stay hidden, it will show trends rather than any specific number. So a general increase or a general decrease of animals. So that's what they're doing at the moment. It's good to know. At least they're not following some bandit group or something, or doing some other nefarious task, and it's something constructive and useful. And it's probably why those elephant were screaming. So the helicopter would have circled the elephant herd once or twice just to get a good count of the exact amount of elephant males and females and babies in that particular herd. And you probably find that stressed them out a little bit, which then precipitated the trumpeting that we were listening to. All right. Good. That feels like I've explained that, I hope. And then just in conclusion to you, James, about that drunken parrot. So for me, I think it's, while feasible, looking at certain points in isolation, i.e. the fermentation of highly concentrated sugary nectar, the weeping of the boerbean tree, and the fact that birds go into a type of feeding frenzy around these particular food sources, I think to join the dots and say that they are all linked and have a terminal point in the actual intoxication of anything is, for me, just probably one step too far. John, you've just asked me if there's any sausage trees on Djuma. There absolutely are sausage trees on Djuma. There's one that grows in Philemon's Dip that is outside of a camp environment, one that we know of, or have found at least anyway. That one has no sausages on at the moment, and then there are a few that grow inside Vuyatela camp. And I haven't walked through Vuyatela camp in the last month or two, in actual fact, so I don't know if any of them potentially have sausages on. But the best time of year to see sausages on a sausage pod tree is at the end of summer. So January, February, March sometime would be the best time to see sausages on a sausage pod tree. And so now there won't be too many of them around. We may find one or two of the older sausages from last year still hanging around. But finding a fresh sausage on a sausage pod tree this time of year, not likely. But I think I'm going to go onto Impala Plains and see if those elephants have come out there. And while I do take balanites and go onto the plains, we're going to send you back across to Jamie and those fantastic lions.
Fantastic lions, and we have most definitely got now the best seat in the house. And despite my repeated calling to people, it seems as though everybody around the reserve is having a lion, like our lions, and doesn't want to come and join us at the sighting. So we've got it all to ourselves, and I simply cannot resist staying here for as long as possible, because these little guys are just absolutely incredible. Those poor moms. So all three of the lionesses are still lactating. This is what we've learned from the sighting. This is the oldest female that's in front, the one with the 2 cubs. She's been busy off feeding on the buffalo carcass still, and she's just made her way and joined the rest of the pride. And she looks a little bit like an overexpanded barrel that's about to burst out of its bindings. She's so full. But that's good. She's got to maintain the resources that the cubs demand from her. She's also, I think, got a little bit of an injury behind her elbow, her front leg. Oh, she's just hidden it as she moved there. But that most likely was from hunting down that buffalo. With lions, personal space is no problem. It's not contended in any way. A lioness will do perfectly well as a footrest or a tail rest, or, if you don't have a lioness close enough, a branch to lift your leg upon. We got a nice explanation from that behavior from one of our viewers many months ago, that it actually makes the lionesses more comfortable when they've got such full bellies. The equivalent to us having had an enormous meal and sprawling on a couch somewhere or something similar. And I suppose it makes sense. You probably don't want anything touching a tummy that size. But not only fighting over buffalo, fighting over milk as well. It just goes to show how tough their mothers are. Because that must be so uncomfortable. They're now well equipped, as we've seen, with, whilst not quite as impressive a weaponry as the adults, they've certainly got their sharp pointed teeth and very vicious looking claws that they've, since in the last 2 or so months, they will have gained some considerable degree of control over. Initially, in the first stages of a cub's life, whether it's a leopard or a lion, they don't have the best control over their retractable claws, and as a result they often scratch and nick each other, themselves, their moms. But now they've got full control and are using them to good measure to hold mom down whilst trying to suckle. Hello, little one. The little ones still have the babyish look. There's a sort of a sleepy, not quite with it expression that they constantly wear. A little bit frazzled and confused, and really just wants to sleep. Cute. We spoke about the play practicing to build up their hunting skills. They also do a lot of sleep practicing, which is something that they are going to perfect over the course of their lives. There's nothing as talented in the world, well, at least in South Africa, as sleeping as a lion is. Sea claws. Kneading mom, which is of course the way that they stimulate her milk production, but absolutely cannot be comfortable for her. And so it seems for now that peace has descended over the Nkuhuma pride. The cubs have all found themselves, barring 1 or 2, a nice comfortable spot to suckle from. The lionesses have settled in the shade, and all is well. All 5 reunited once again with their babbling brood, and jeepers do they make a lot of noise. These little lion cubs is constant. Except now, as I said that. This, I imagine, is how they will spend the rest of their days. Not days, day, getting up and going to feed off the buffalo. And Natasha in Ontario, we spoke about the cubs and whether or not they are male or female, and you wanted to know how you can tell the difference. It's very difficult in the beginning, Natasha, because of course for the little males, their testicles haven't descended. So it can be quite tricky, although you will just be able to see the vaguest outline. So the way that, or the sort of the easiest way that we can tell at this stage is to have a look at the distance between the urinary tract, or the genital opening, and the anus of the little cubs. So the further apart away they are, and the shape of them, will determine whether or not they're a male or a female. In males it's slightly further because of course the testicles descend between those two spots, whereas in females it's not quite the same distance and not quite the same shape. And it's something tricky that it's not an easy skill to master, and I haven't had a chance to properly sort through footage and look at all the cubs. Luckily for us, a couple of our viewers have done it. I know Liz sent through some wonderful explanations behind her, what would I call it, not theory, but what her research has revealed in terms of our split. I could be wrong. Hold on, I need to think of this now. I did look it up, but I've been distracted by many other things. We know at least one male in the older group, in the oldest set. I think the twins in the middle are 2 females, and then there might be 2 males in the younger group, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a 5-3 split, 5 females, 3 males. Unless if I've got that wrong, my apologies. As I said, I haven't had a chance to double check or even look through the footage to examine each and every cub's delicate bits. But that is the way that one would tell. At least it's easier than hyenas, let's put it that way. And then, in the next month or so, it's going to start becoming more and more apparent with the little males, because they get their fluffy cheeks and heads. The beginnings of a mane that will one day spread across the top of their head and down their chests. But for the first 3 or so years of their lives look relatively pathetic and sort of adolescent, and kind of like the scraggly beards that teenage boys start to grow when they think that they're growing when they start growing facial hair. It's all patchy in parts. That's what a little male lion mane looks like. But some of them are already, to me, starting to look a little bit of a fluffiness around the face. Lou raises a very good point. It's not just teenage boys that do that. There's some men as well with also patchy beards. That's kind of what our little lion cubs look like. And by the way, just speaking of scraggly beards, a message coming through from Brent for all of you to say thank you so much for all of his happy birthday wishes. He is now on leave and having a wonderful time, but he just wanted me to pass on the message to say thank you very much, and he had a wonderful birthday yesterday. So thank you to those of you who sent through those fantastic messages. Just while our lions are napping away, sleeping off some tremendously full bellies. This is most definitely an idyllic time of year. The temperature is absolutely perfect. It was a little bit nippy this morning, but it's now a very comfortable temperature, and I'm sure the lions are quite grateful for that, because of course all that digestion means lots and lots of heat and warmth building up in their stomachs, which does mean it's particularly uncomfortable for them in the initial stages. And of course the flies start to gather as well. Excuse me. Look at that regal pose. Isn't that magnificent and awe-inspiring? Sort of. A little bit of dirt around the nose. Yes, you are beautiful. With your oversized ears. I think we're going to try and spend as much time as possible. I'm going to give them another few moments to see whether or not they plan on doing this for the rest of the sunrise drive, and we'll decide from there. But for now, let's head across to Stef and find out what he's up to on this beautiful spring morning.
Welcome back. We've just found those elephant that are screaming like that. They just are miles away from where we are. And we're going to see if we can show you the back of one through the gap there just to prove the point. Let's see if we can do it. It's going to be a bit of a find through there. Let's see. There we go. Well done, Jean-Ray. You just see a trunk reaching up through the leaves. They're completely relaxed now again, which is a good thing. And you'd be happy to know that we've also just located tracks of Shadow. Or it's a female leopard, I don't know if it is Shadow. She's got the same small dainty track that Shadow has, crossing onto Djuma at the Arethusa sign. And so it seems like Shadow is doing okay. The footprints don't show any significant dragging of any of the limbs. And it looked like the track is about last night early, sometime around sunset. So let's see where these ellies are. Is about in the middle of a block, and we'll see if we can go around and perhaps catch them coming out of this block here, and see if we can get. So go, in other words, go in front of their line of travel and see if they come out and want to be on camera today. Felicity, all the way from New Zealand. Good evening to you, Felicity. You've just asked, following on from the helicopter and the stress associated to these inspections, you wanted to know if elephants suffer from any stress-related diseases and could they die of a heart attack or some other form of stress disorder. Let me think about that a little bit. I suppose so. They are a highly intelligent social creature. And I would imagine that with that intelligence comes the ability to panic and to stress. Herds definitely exhibit these sort of stress signs. They'll scream and trumpet and panic about. And they do weep from their temporal glands. Not just because of hormonal changes, but also when they are in periods of stress, they will weep. These glandular secretions. So without knowing for sure, I'm probably just deduced that yes, they can absolutely suffer from stress disorders. Abused elephant, someone's lost their shoe there. I don't even want to know what that's from, but let's go and show you anyway. So in the middle of the Kruger National Park, in the middle of a Big 5 game reserve, we have Anne's shoe lying discarded. I'm going to have to pick it up. I can't just let that lie there. Now, I have a very macabre story of having guided in a place where lions were well known to have actually eaten people and were considered man-eaters, of finding a shoe similar to this with the foot still in it. I think it was Brent actually who'd seen that. This doesn't seem to have a foot in it, although very gingerly I'm going to see. No, it has no foot in it. But, I mean, this can only be the cause of one thing, and that was a game ranger leaving his shoe to dry outside his room and a hyena picking it up and carrying it with him. So it has no foot in it, but it can only be a hyena discard.
Oh, thanks, on my apple.
Oh, sorry. I missed your apple. Threw the disgusting shoe on Jean-Ray's breakfast. So, Felicity, just to finish your question there about the stress disorders, elephants that have been abused are also widely known to have developed some types of psychosis and some types of of very bad behavior as a result of the stress induced by the mishandling and by the abuse. And so yes, will they suffer a heart attack? I don't think so. Will they suffer some other type of disease, some mental disease associated to stress? Yes, I think that they can possibly do that. So I hope that answered your question there. I don't know for sure, but I mean, I can think. A long distance view of these ellies. Let's see if we can get you one or two views just in case they're not close to a road or don't want to play ball. These are the elephant that were trumpeting so wildly, excuse me. Feeding slowly toward us, flapping their ears, and that will answer the question as to whether or not we're going to be seeing them from the road. I doubt it. They're sort of in the middle of this. It's a tiny little block, but they are in the middle of it, feeding slowly towards us. So what we're going to do is actually just wait here and see if they come towards us or where they're going to go. It doesn't look like they are standing still, and they cover a tremendous amount of distance, even just ambling like that. And hopefully in a few short moments they'll be close enough to have a better view. And there's even a little baby there. Oh, they're so cute, man. Jilly, in York, you've just commented on a comment that I made a little bit earlier about the Kruger National Park shutting its waterholes. Perhaps I could add or shed a little bit of light on it. They're not shutting, water in the park won't disappear. There's a lot of permanent water in the park, many seeps, many fountains, many permanent rivers. All the Kruger National Park are doing is shutting the pumped waterholes. They have decided through, and they are, above all else, the Kruger National Park are conservation and a scientific organization. And what they've figured out is that these man-made waterholes are having a negative impact on the bush. They are beneficial to some species of animals like impala, for instance, and they are not beneficial to other species of animals like sable and like roan, for instance, black rhino. And the effect or the impact that these watering holes have on the bush in its local area is too big. And they're finding that the bush is not able to recover sufficiently in a growth season before the next dry season hits again, and more compaction and more eating. And their job or their function as a conservation organization is to protect biodiversity and all biodiversity, not just some and in favor of others and not in favor of some. Plants and animals included. And so they decided to close, as an experiment, a long-term experiment, close the man-made waterholes in the park to see what effect that has on the bush, on its carrying capacity, on the diversity and the protection of the diversity. And so it's just it's an experiment based on facts and results from other studies. And so no, the animals won't be that affected by it, to be honest. I mean, some areas will be devoid of animals, the areas that have no permanent water. Areas that have permanent water will be visited by these animals. And yes, it's true, we won't know exactly the impact that this has on the animals. This is the first drought since that policy was adopted. But many scientists will be working on it, and you know, the hope is that in a couple of years they'll be able to tell us exactly what sort of effect this had on animals, and perhaps add value to the way that reserves like the Sabi Sands manages their surface water reserves as well. So hopefully it's not too distressing. It's a good thing. Science needs to happen in these places to understand the impact, as animals are forced to only live in the last reserves that we proclaim in their name. It's very important that we don't make mistakes that can have very long-term negative effects on the carrying capacity of these places. And so scientific exploration is very, very important. All right, so closing that discussion and still waiting for these elephants to come closer to a road where we can view them from, it's always a good thing to send you over to Lion. What a pleasure.
So while Stef waits for the largest of all of the mammal species out here, we are with the largest of the cat species, who are doing fantastic jobs of looking like tawny-coloured, gently breathing logs. Thoroughly comfortable. The action is, for now, I think, over for the day, and everybody's settled in for a nice morning snooze, including Amber Eyes, whose paw is resting very comfortably up on the tambuti in front of her. She has in fact contorted herself and managed to find what looks like the best possible position. Amber Eyes, of course, is now probably one of the most famous lionesses in all the world, thanks to her wonderful lion cub hug that she did one afternoon live on the Sunset Safari, that I think, on my last count, then I actually have to thank the viewers for sending through those details, but on my last count there's roughly 12 million people that have watched on Facebook alone, as she reached over and gave one of her little nieces or nephews a serious cuddle. They're such lucky creatures to be growing up with such an extraordinary protective family unit. Look at them. Safe, secure, and very happy. I'm just listening to an update on the Game Drive channel. It sounds as though the reason that it's been so quiet is that they had a sighting of Tundi in a river system called the Mulwanini, having spoken about our female leopard Tundi, and she had her cubs with her. How wonderful to hear that they are still safe and sound, and we can look forward to seeing them as well. You know, just in case we haven't been spoilt enough with our lion cubs and our leopard cubs sort of coming out of our ears, so to speak. I'm definitely not complaining. And speaking of not complaining, I want to put something to all of you, and that is whether or not you would like to stay at this sighting, or whether you think that perhaps I should go out and see what else I can find. Spending time with these little cubs, these little monsters, is always magic, but I think that the action is largely complete for the day, since they have such enormous bellies to sleep off. So if you would like to leave, or if you would like to stay, please send us through your opinion on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv, and we are a democracy here, sort of, depending on what's happening. We are largely a democracy, unless, of course, I decide to be a dictator. But I was wondering whether or not, I'd love to hear from you, whether or not you'd like to move on, or if you'd like to stick around. So just send us through that. And this time I won't be a dictator, and I'm more than happy to listen to whatever it is the majority would like to do. I know what this cub wants to do, and that is continue to snooze in the most comfortable position possible. I've been closely examining these little guys. It's definitely not mange, it's definitely dirty buffalo kill that they've got all over their fur. Now, of course, our lovely Nkuhuma pride is probably the pride that we have spent the most time with, or certainly the pride that I have spent the most time with over my last year and a bit at Safari Live. And we have a question from one of our newer viewers about whether or not the Nkuhuma pride name means anything. And toxigenic, the name does indeed mean something. It means brown ivory in the local Shangaan language. So Nkuhuma is a brown ivory tree. It's a beautiful species of tree. I know that Stef's been chatting a bit about sausage trees. The Nkuhuma tree, or the brown ivory tree, is something equally sort of, what would the word be, amazing to look at. And they were named after the Nkuhuma tree because they were found sleeping in the shade of the Nkuhuma tree, or relatively regularly returned to the same spot. We've got one or two of them around Djuma. There's a beautiful one close to Philemon's Katla in Gowrie, Maine, one of my absolute favourite trees. And one of the trees that the Latin name continues to escape me, much to Brent's chagrin. He's constantly shouting at me because it's just one of those names that just will not stick in my head, which is most embarrassing. Aha, and so we have feedback from my previous question, which is whether to stay or to go, and it seems as though the majority, in this case, would like to leave, see what else we can find, and of course we do have the potential, not the potential, we have the definite prospect of revisiting them once again on the sunset safari. So that is what we shall do. We'll enjoy a couple of last beautiful views of our lovely lions, and then we will head off. And since it should take me roughly until the sunset safari to get out of here, we'll be able to return to them once again. So one last look at our sleeping pile of flat cats and their gorgeous babies, a well-earned rest for our lovely huntresses and their growing little ones. And then it is time for us to send you back across to Stef while I negotiate my way out of this particular spot.
Jandre just keeps on commenting at how poor my vehicle placement is, but it is the only place that we can get to close to these elephant, and so I'm ignoring those sallies in favor of proximity, and he just needs to be better at his camera work, to be quite honest with you. I've got new cameras, there's no excuse. These ellies are slowly making their way towards us, and they're probably about 10 or so of these elephants here. I think the herd was actually split by that helicopter. Off to our left-hand side, we've got some elephants screaming about. These ones here seem to be pretty relaxed. I think the matriarch we were having a look at a bit earlier, which was the largest elephant that we could see a couple of minutes ago, she's sort of drifting around in the background there with the baby, parallel to us. Not really coming much closer, unfortunately, but the hope is that they do. They're sort of vectoring into us at the moment, and making their way down to a small depression which lies just behind us. I think they're going to spend the heat of the day probably in that depression or fairly close to it. And I'm hoping that before the end of the show, at least, that we get some ellies close to the car. Caitlin, all the way from Ontario in Canada. Wow, just the reach is just incredible. You've asked which animals have it the hardest out here in the Kruger National Park. Caitlin, that is such a difficult question to answer, to be honest with you. Jandre says it's the cameraman taking the abuse that have the most difficult life, but I just think he's feeling sorry for himself. So take no notice of that comment, Caitlin. Let me think about that a little bit, Caitlin, because I'd like to say that no animal really has it easier or harder than any other animal here. I think, and that's probably what I'm going to say to you. I think there's no real animal that has it harder than anything else out here. There's probably, from an unfairness point of view, rhino, I'd like to say, because they poached for their horn, and there seems to be this mass attack lately on the rhino populations in the Kruger National Park due to poaching. They probably have it quite hard at the moment, because not only have they got to deal with all the environmental pressures, they also now have to deal with the fact that they're being persecuted for their horns. So that would probably be that now, but I'm sure you weren't asking about rhino horn poaching. I'm sure you were just asking about general how difficult it is to live out here. And for that reason, I'd like to say that it's equally as difficult and equally as easy. Everything out here has a predator of some sort or another. Everything out here is affected by drought and flood and rain and storm, wind, lack of food, mud, too much rain, too little rain. Everything is sort of equally affected at different times of the year. So I hope that answered your question there, Caitlin. But if I were to say one species Absolutely, rhino is where it would have to be, followed closely by leopard, maybe, you know, just also because they're just being persecuted for their coats just haphazardly all over the place. All right, enough that little bit of a depressing thing. We have a young ellie here feeding in front of us. You can see even from a distance, you can see that spine sticking out on the back half of the body. And that is just a sign of the times. They will obviously lose condition with the poor quality of the bush around here. And they cannot hope to feed enough in a 24-hour day of all this very low quality or low nutritional value food sources that they have. So they will lose a little bit of weight, but you can see that that elephant is still moving vigorously. There's none of that lethargy that is associated to deep hunger. Animals that are losing condition can hardly lift their heads up. They'll be lying down, resting in shade. And these elephants, they know. Every day you stand up, you do your work, you eat as much as what you can, you keep moving, you keep yourself hydrated, and that is the way that you make it through the dry season. Good life lesson in that. That you don't give up no matter what. No matter how hard it seems, every single day you just get up and shove some leaves and sticks in your face and everything will be okay. Right, put ourselves in a little bit of a different position here. And see if these ellies are coming any closer to us or they're just sort of running parallel to us, which is I think probably what they're doing. There you go. You can see them a little bit better through that gap. They're literally just in the fringe of bush, right adjacent to us, right next to us actually, but being uncooperative from a nice photo point of view. You'll notice every now and again that lazy flap of the ears, cooling their blood in the ears down before going back into the body, close to the brain and close to the core of the body. And that is exactly what they're doing, those big radiators or the big flappy ears with a massive network of veins in them. And to a degree, depending on the time of year, elephants are able to even regurgitate water or fluid in their tummies, suck it up in their trunks and then spray it behind their ears, where the evaporation of that moisture cools the blood down to such an extent that they can keep their body temperatures very, very, not low, but they can keep their core body temperature cool and well within the habitable range. And you see it on the Chobe River where elephants are just standing in the sun all day. The Chobe is the source of the water. The elephant wait for the rain and the associated flush in vegetation. It's just too much effort to walk to vegetation with all the elephant there. So they just stand in the sun, spraying water behind their ears, keeping their core body temperature down, not overexerting themselves, and keeping themselves cool that way. You can see him drifting along. Not too many youngsters in this particular herd. I've only seen one baby myself. The rest are all made up of sort of adolescents with one or two adults. There's another adolescent there. You see the tiny tusk every now and again gleaming in the sun. And just drifting through the trees. They're kicking up some dust. Not any remarkable sighting, I must be honest with you, other than the fact that we do have some elephant here and they're always nice to see. But just generally just going about their day, calm after the helicopter. I've just heard the helicopter again do another one of its transects, and I was very carefully watching this elephant to see if it reacted in any way, and it didn't. So I think the little bit of stress of having a helicopter circle above their head is quickly forgotten. You can just see even the babies are very relaxed. Marco, you wanted to know about elephant graveyards, and do they actually exist, and have we ever seen them? Marco, yes, in a nutshell, elephant graveyard does exist, but not in the way that we think of a graveyard, a traditional graveyard. So the beginning of the story is actually to do with the elephant's teeth. They get 6 sets of molars, 1 in each quadrant of the face. I just need to move out of the way here quickly. We've got some traffic coming, and I'll finish. Marco, I'll finish your question in a second. So 6 sets of molars. When they're around about 45 or so, the last set of molars comes into being, into their face, and depending on the coarseness of the vegetation in their diet, will wear out. And will wear out eventually. In the Kruger National Park, they tend to wear out by the time the elephant is about 55 to 60 years old. At this point, the elephant loses the ability to fully process roughage or rough material and will gradually move to marshy areas. Old elephant almost never leave swampy areas, and in this part of the world and in many other game reserves around Africa, these tend to be the fringes of riverbeds. The elephant will then feed on the softest vegetation that he can handle, and at a point will lose the ability to feed himself, at which point either disease or starvation or a fall somewhere kills that elephant. Because these events usually happen in or very close to riverbeds, when rivers flood, bones of these elephants, including their tusks, are taken down a river and collect on sandy bends, and over successive generations, many layers of these elephant bones will build up in these sandy beds, and people have quite often excavated these sandy beds and found many layers of elephant bones, including their tusks. And this led them to believe that this was some sort of, or the folklore to believe that this was some sort of graveyard, that elephants came to this one place and died on top of each other at different times in the ages, when in actual fact it was just the river depositing these bones in these eddies, basically, on these sandbanks, and the bones were in the river in the first place because the elephants came to the river systems to eat softer vegetation and then eventually died here because of the fact that their teeth basically wear down to nothing. So that's where the story about elephant graveyards come from. And so there is some truth, obviously, in every one of these stories, but definitely not a fact of an elephant going to a specific place or a singular point to die. It's more that elephant come to these areas of softer, better vegetation. I see that the elephant are slowly now moving even closer to us, which is good, and we can now go into the open a bit. Move forward now that that car has passed. Excuse me. I'll try to cover your microphone. Oh, that was a massive sneeze. Please excuse me for all of you who've just woken up out of your reverie. There you go. That's about the clearest shot of these ellies we've had since we spotted them in the distance. That elephant using her foot. I know it's a female. Have a look at that very angled forehead in profile. And that is just typical of a female elephant. Male have this very rounded, almost dome-like forehead. She's busy eating the leaves and fronds of a peltiforum bush, which are not normally on elephants' menus, but I have seen them literally in the last 3 weeks start to eat these peltiforums with a relish. They don't actually taste too bad, to be quite honest. They're not particularly hard, leathery leaf. I just think that their nutritional value is quite low, and so only in times like this will elephant actually feed on them. I haven't seen elephant knocking the trees down to gain access to their roots. Just feeding on their leaves. It's one of the few unleathery leafed plants around at the moment. You can see this elephant definitely enjoying that. Standing on the branch, picking it up. Feeding with a gusto. Oh, it's nice being out here today. The sun is quite hot at the moment. There is a slight breeze blowing, not very strong at all, not even enough to blow branches around on trees, just wiggling the grass fronds, the few stems that are left. And the wind is coming out of the east, or the northeast, which is typical of a winter wind. Our rain comes out of the southeast, or south, for the smaller rainstorms, and then our huge rain comes out of the north. So when we see a storm front approaching from the north, it generally is typical of a massive storm. I can't quite catch your name, but I think it's Ethan or Heathen, something like that. Sorry, where we are now, it's Stephen, excuse me. Gee whiz. Heard that one wrong. So Stephen, you've made a comment that in Thailand you heard a story about a baby elephant dying and then the rest of the herd walking circles around it, so that the next morning when the herd had left, there was a perfect ring around this baby elephant. And you wanted to know if that, I suppose you wanted to know if that happens with these elephants, and or if it was true. There's no doubt in my mind that elephant, and it's a recorded fact that elephant do recognize mortality. And they do mourn those of them that have died. They'll pick up and visit grave sites very often, or death sites very often, and stroke bones. And they do stand in a circle around carcasses, facing outwards, while each member of the herd will have their turn to inspect not only the body, but also the individual bones if the carcass is old enough. And you can see there's a hush, there's a reverence for the dead. I've never seen them walking circles around carcasses. I've also never seen the track or the sign of circles around carcasses. I have seen them corralled. In other words, bums towards the carcass, faces out, and then every member of the herd having a chance to turn around and touch and sniff and feel the carcasses. We've definitely seen that before, but no circle. So tracks in a circle, but not walking in a circle, if that means the tracks radiating out from carcasses. And so I hope that answers your question. Not quite. So not here, not that I've seen, not that I've witnessed, not that I've read about, but definitely plausible. All right, and on that note, Jamie's now made her way out of the block, and I'm sure would love to tell you about what she's going to do for the last couple of minutes of this drive.
Stef is absolutely spot on. I would love to tell you what I'm planning on doing for the rest of the drive, now that, lo and behold, Dave and myself have managed to make our way back onto a road. Now, the plan is, because Herbert, the wonderful Herbert, has picked up on Queen Karula's tracks, finally making their way back onto Djuma. So for new viewers, Queen Karula is one of our favorite leopard characters, and Queen of Djuma, essentially, because this is the center of her territory. She also happens to have 2 gorgeous 7-month-old little cubs, 7 months old as of tomorrow, I believe. Yes, 7 months old as of tomorrow. We were lucky enough to know exactly when they were born because Brent just happened to find her as she gave birth, essentially, which is an incredible, I mean, basically unheard of situation to be in. So, we're going to go, and for the last few moments of the sunrise safari, we're going to trawl the Mulwati, the great flowing river that cuts Djuma in half. It is not, of course, flowing, nor, in fact, is it great, but it is beautiful. We're going to go and see what we can see there, and once or twice things have very much paid off. And there we go. James Richard is saying all the prospect of a leopard and that he loves the sound of that. I couldn't agree more. You know, just to complete my whole welcome back experience, I could have had a catch up with Nkuhuma, Sindile, and now, hopefully, get a chance to see Karula as well. Of course, tracking her is an incredibly difficult process. I know that Herbert has been busy for the last hour or so looking for her. The difficulty is he's encountered about 5 different herds of elephants and several different buffalo, and he decided that discretion was the better part of valor, which I think was a very sensible decision, and he's moved out of that particular area. And we're just going to hope that she decides to pop into the Mulwati drainage line, which is one of her favorite spots, and where she has had much success in terms of hunting the little antelope that live there. So that is my plan for the rest of the morning sunrise safari, and of course stopping for all the wonderful things that we see along the way. It's always interesting coming back and reacquainting oneself with the area. It is very dry. It is very, I know this, you know, this is kind of a constant refrain, but for me to just see the difference in a 2-week period is quite astounding. Okay. Cruising around a road known as Vulture's Nest and making our way into the drainage system. And Soraya and Dr. Rob, while we make our way into the drainage system, would like to know on a more general note what the difference is between dung and scat. Dung is, it's a very simple distinction. Dung is herbivore poo, scat is predator poo, and feces is the excrement of omnivores. So humans, baboons, monkeys, whatever else happens to fall into the omnivorous category. And the big difference is dung, you will see us touch, sometimes even spit if you're lucky. Scat we will not touch with our bare hands, and that's something I actually have to do, is go and collect Sindile's scat this afternoon on the sunset safari, since I now know that he has left the area and I know exactly where he happened to deposit a nice fresh pile of it. I'm going to be popping over there to add to our collection of leopard scat vials. I don't know if I ever told you the story about the one that we accidentally misplaced and ended up in our shoebox for about a year, but we did. And when we did the single sock party, we found a vial of... we're still not entirely sure whose fault that was. It's somebody's fault, probably mine, but I'm not quite willing to admit that just yet. But this particular vial of shadow scat, if you were interested in that, luckily, of course, they already had shadow scat, but it was... we may or may not have found it in the box, at the bottom of the box that contains our socks. So weird, some of the weird things that one finds when you've been working in the bush for a while. I have to say though, a vial of leopard scat is one of the weirdest. Okie dokie, let us go and dip our toes into the freezing, non-existent water of the Mulwati. Oh, no, let us say hello to Herbie first. Hello, Herbert. Hi, guys. Any luck?
Oh,
No, too.
yeah. From the Puza spot,
Yeah.
there's a big game path.
Yes.
The first Shinkova. She went in there.
Oh, okay. Maybe she's hanging out somewhere there.
Yeah, but there's lots of buffaloes and ellies.
Okay,
So
no problem.
chance.
No problem. Did you drive the Mulwati or did you come?
No, I spoke to Stef and said he's gonna check.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Is
Okay.
there anyone who didn't gather?
It was totally empty, open when I left.
Okay. Did you access from the
Hyena Road.
from Hyena Road?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best way. The track's becoming clearer.
Okay.
And they're nice and in the open now. Okay,
Thanks, you.
enjoy. Cheers, guys. Okie dokie. And speaking of our lovely river system, Vic, I would very much like to see the Mulwati drainage system flowing with water. Look, I mean, it's clearly not a perennial river at all. There might be times when it floods down, when there's heavy rainfall. I'm sorry, excuse me. So 2 years ago we had the most extraordinary floods in this area. I mean, there were days where we were getting 200 mils of rain in a day, which for us here is a considerable amount. And I think that is what it would take to get the Mulwati flowing. Unfortunately, there are places where there's considerable blockages in terms of fallen trees, stuff that the ellies have plonked down into the middle, piles of sand, you know, debris that builds up naturally. So it would take a considerable amount of water to get it to pour down. But Vic, I think there is a very good chance of seeing it at some point. Whether or not it's going to happen this year is another story, because the sand is so dry. Usually in these riverbeds, you've got the sort of the normal sand layer, and then you've actually got quite a lot of waterlogged sand underneath that, which is why the elephants often dig here for water. But now you can imagine the level of the underground water must be considerably lower than normal. So it will take some time as the sand starts to absorb. I was observing a duiker. I'm getting my words mixed up, and as a consequence, nothing's gone right. Where'd you go, little one? Gone. Going. Here we go. Observe the duiker while we discuss the absorption of water. Surprisingly tricky to get those two confused. And off he goes. I know you had an extraordinary sighting with Stef and the duiker earlier this morning. They don't often stick around, particularly not with the prospect of a leopard wandering about. While we go and see whether or not Karula has decided to make her way all the way to the flowing Mulwati or the non-flowing Mulwati, let's jump on the back with Stef for an update.
The update that we have is we've left those elephants. They were not wanting to play ball, and they were walking parallel to us. And it also, the last couple of minutes of this particular drive, I wanted to come and see what was around Sydney's dam. That's exactly what I wanted to come and have a look at. So, hold on, I just want to get rid of these voices in my ear again. I keep on forgetting to do that before you come, and I don't know if you can notice my eyeballs start to wander around my socket, similar to a chameleon's when people start speaking into my head. Alright, so we're going to go here and have a look at Sydney's and see what is there. I haven't been to Sydney's dam in a good few days. I want to see what's the situation with the water. Is there lots of water? How much water is left? Because it'll give us a good understanding of what to expect around Pan in the next couple of days and weeks as we reach the terminal stages of this particular dry spell. Hopefully that's what it's going to be. There could very well be a similar situation to last year where rains just don't come. Last year, to give you or any of you new viewers an idea, we had 1/4 of the expected rainfall for the year last year, which amounted to about 150 mils, which is this much. It's not a lot of water for this area whatsoever. And if you're asking yourselves what administrative buildings we've just passed that came into view, we're at the Gowrie Gate, which is the entrance to the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, and they have a few administrative buildings and things. That's what we're going around right now. Sydney's dam, a sad sight, except for the flowering knobthorn, which I think we're going to celebrate. It is a beautiful looking tree. Just have a look at that in front of us. We will get a bit closer. But look at that dash of color in this otherwise drab environment. Isn't that just fantastic? A real show off. Awesome. Let's go a little bit closer and see what we can see, if there's anything in the tree of note. I've noticed that it's being pollinated by some beetles, not very many, some jewel beetles, and also the butterflies of the acrias. There's the Sabi Sands helicopter doing some game counts. So that is the transects. You can see there's a scientist, well, no, you won't be able to see there's a scientist in there, but there'll be some very brave man hanging out of the side of that helicopter with a clipboard shouting out counts to someone sitting next to him, and they will be recording what they see. We won't keep the camera on there too long, Mr. Genre. I think we'll probably get into trouble if we are caught out. So it's best you look at my bald shiny head and see if you can see the helicopter reflected in that than us doing what we're just doing. And off we go to this tree that I want to show you. It is not Louise says she can definitely see something. That's not nice, Louise. I want to go and show you this showy knobthorn acacia. Let's go and see if we can see something in it. The acria butterflies, I think we're a little bit far away to actually identify what butterflies are going to be pollinating this particular tree, and we'll probably have this helicopter ruin it a little bit for us. Nevertheless, not every day we get to see a flying helicopter in the Sabi Sands. I can't see any butterfly movement in it. Not unusual though. Butterflies tend to really only get going once the day starts to warm up. So I have no doubt that this particular tree will start to have its host of butterflies and insect visitors and pollinators. You can see there, even in profile, you can't see too much flitting about over there. But as the day warms up, whatever butterflies are around at the moment, I would imagine would come for a sip of the nectar. Very few, let me rephrase that, excuse me. There is little nectar produced by a knobthorn flower and much pollen. And so generally the beetles, which are the pollen feeders, they're the ones that actually do the pollinating. They swim through pollen is a very nice description of a beetle swimming through the nectar, basically just shoveling these flowers into his mouth and gleaning the nectar off, and in so doing gets covered in nectar. Will then take flight and fly to a different tree, and as he's busy swimming through that flower, he's busy pollinating the next generation of knobthorns to replace all the ones that are eaten and knocked over by all the elephant. Alright, so nothing else at Sydney's. Quite a lot of water actually still here, so that's a good thing. Tomcat, you just said that the guy in the helicopter would be counting 15, 16 and then be blinded by Stef's head, the mirror. Thanks, Tomcat. Appreciate those comments. I actually quite like my bald head, to be honest. I was never one for a hairstyle when I was a youngster. Couldn't stand the fact that I needed to brush my hair in a particular way to be socially accepted. And so having no hair was an absolute blessing, one I celebrate every day. All right, and on that, I think we're going to get my tongue all untied there. I'm sending you over to Jamie for an update.
No sign of the lovely Queen of Djuma in the Mulwati drainage, but all hope is not lost. She might be just around the next bend, you never know. To steal a phrase from the wonderful Hayden Turner. Come on, Karila, one more corner. One more corner. Just be here, in the shade, with your gorgeous babies. Oh well, the scenery's pretty anyway. Right, just a quick update for those of you, there is a little bit of confusion about our time changes. for now, because we're busy sorting things out, there's lots and lots of stuff happening. There's the Mara, there's all kinds of exciting and wonderful things planned. As a result, we are not going to be changing times just yet. So we will keep you updated as to when we do, but for now, our times are staying exactly as they are at the present moment, which means 6 o'clock in the morning Central African time and 3 o'clock Central African time in the afternoon. So just an update on that. We will let you know. The times will of course change. We try and shift with the sunrise and the sunset to allow us the best possible game viewing times. Come on, Karuna. So hoping she'd be tucked away in one of these secret little spots that we know and love. And Benji in Los Angeles, lovely to have you on board. Since I am back once again on Djuma, yes, we will be doing a hyena den check at some stage. Of course, we couldn't turn away the prospect of the lovely Nkuhumas and their cubs this morning, but I am planning a check in the hope against hope, because unfortunately all reports seem to indicate that our hyenas have not returned to Manileti, and I think the chances of them returning while the Nkuhumas are camping out in some of their favorite spots with brand new cubs, I think sort of slightly lessens the chances that they will be there. But I will check, I promise. I always find it very difficult to drive past an old hyena den without checking it anyway. So yes, I promise over the next few days I will be doing a thorough and careful check of all of the different hyena den spots. Perhaps our lovely spotted friends have decided to return to us once again. I certainly miss them an incredible amount, and I know that lots of our viewers do too. We've had so many magical moments with our hyena cubs, only to have them up and leave on us. Deeply disappointing and slightly devastating. Well, we shall have to continue our search for the lovely Queen of Djuma this afternoon on the Sunset Safari, and if I know Herbert like I know Herbert, and I think I know Herbert quite well, he's going to be like a dog with a bone and refuse to not track her down, so I'm sure he will be helping us out as well this afternoon. Certainly nobody would ever begin to question Herbert's dedication in terms of finding our incredible animals. So that, I think, will be our plan for this afternoon's Sunset Safari. And for those of you watching in South Africa and across the world, actually, don't forget about the solar eclipse. For those of you watching in the Central African time zone, it will be at 11 a.m. this morning. So that's something I think we're all going to be rushing out to see. Of course, please don't look straight into the sun. That would be highly irresponsible and very silly of me not to give you that warning. You're going to hurt your eyes, possibly irreparably. So no staring straight into the sun, please. If you've got the suitable glasses, then use them. We'll probably drag our cameramen out with their cameras. I'm sure they'll be able to make a plan. But yes, no direct sun staring. It leads to madness, pain, and discomfort. And thus we come to the end of another sunrise safari. It is so lovely to be back out here and just enjoying the incredible creatures, sights, sounds, and at some point smells when my sense of smell returns. And I'm glad that we could share it all with you on this glorious day. We'll join you again in just a few short hours for the Sunset Safari, but for now it's time to do our goodbyes and our thank yous. So a big thank you to Dave for his wonderful camera work, some spectacular scenes of those wonderful little cubs, as well as to Lou and to Jerry in final controls. Lovely to have you back, Jerry, as always. And most importantly, an enormous thank you to all of you watching across the globe for joining us, for sharing our love of our fantastic creatures, and for sending through your questions, comments, and your wonderful company. I hope that you have a spectacular day wherever you happen to find yourself, and that we will be seeing you on the Sunset Safari. Bye-bye.